Okay. Yeah, I am mostly recovered. Uh, I'm I'm well recovered from the conference. Thank you for asking. Um, it looks like my mic is picking up, but as always, let me know in the chat if you guys can hear me, just to make sure we have that right. Hey Naz, hey Lucas. Glad you guys are here. Okay, cool. You can hear me. That means we can get rolling in just a little bit. I changed the angle of where I'm recording things a little bit, so I don't know. I hope it's interesting. It's a little awkward on my side, but I feel like this shows more of some of the random stuff. So we got my VR headset up here. Hey Francisco. Hey Lovers. Cool. We got a whole bunch of people showing up. Excellent. Um, and I'll talk about this more at the end. But as a side thing, uh, I did start a second channel where right now I am putting out some VR content. Just Let's Plays. Mostly it's just been the one game so far. But I just got I just got Fallout 4 VR Essentials mod list that was made and curated by Gingas. Got that installed and mostly working. And then I think I need to double check it, but it looks like I have Enderal VR installed, and I'm working on a Skyrim VR mod list from Wabajack. So pretty soon there might be. I'm hoping to get some uh, actual RP Let's Plays out there. So that's gonna be fun. But I'm gonna go ahead and start recording because I learned I should record on OBS as well. Okay, I'll do my quick intro and we will go. Actually, no, I don't even need to do my intro. I handle that in post. So, hey guys, it is good to see you guys. I've got new headset, slightly new setup. Oh man, always the second I start recording, I've been sitting here for like 15 minutes and my nose has been fine. I hit the record button and my nose starts itching. Um, so, as the title suggests, lately when I did a Zoom call with people on my newsletter, and one of the questions that came up was building soft magic systems, which I've been talking about a bit more. And then while I was at the Pikes Peak Writers Conference in Colorado Springs, I I found myself having discussions with people where we it seems that magic building gets conflated with plotting a lot, like pre-planning and pre-work. And talk about I try and talk about it like you don't have to do your magic first. So I wanted to actually have a conversation where I talked a little bit specifically about how I think discovery writers could go about building their magic systems. And I've got some stuff I'm going to talk through, and then from there I'm going to shift to a second topic, and then we will close out with the Q&A. So I hope you guys have. Oh, hey Andrew, good to see you. Um, I hope you guys have some questions. I'll check the my question box when we get there. But let's talk about the relationship between magic systems and discovery writers. Because when you have people like me or people who are like plot heavy, we do tend to do a lot of the construction, or people who are setting heavy, we tend to do a lot of the construction prior to actually getting into the story. So we'll have factions laid out. I personally will know how the magic works. I have a pretty good idea of where the plot wants to go, and I'll get a lot of that stuff sorted out before I even start writing a chapter. But that's not everybody. And this is something I discuss a little bit in some of the other videos where I talk about what I'm currently calling approach vectors. I'm not fully happy with that metaphor. I need to find a better metaphor, but I haven't yet. But the idea is if your story is a place on a map that is sealed off by a bunch of gates, and it's your approach vector is which of the gates do you go through first, and a lot of that comes down to personal style, preference, and personality, and that's going to connect with what is most important to you. So discovery writers, um, they from the clients I have had and the people I've talked with at conferences, they often it's not that they don't have high importance on plot. And this is where like personality stuff comes in, but they tend to be pretty heavily focused on um, character and some of the more nebulous things like character and theme. Sometimes they'll have plot in there, and that's where you'll get to. Uh, oh boy. um, sometimes it will be plot, and that's where you'll get people who have a little bit more structure as they go through. But discovery writers, I feel, tend to have connection to some of the vibes of their story more than anything else, and then they move from there. So part of what's sort of developing in my head related to the approach vectors is it's starting to seem to me like there's actually a ranking that people have in terms of the different aspects of story and different things that can spark ideas for them. And the lower something is in the ranking, the more developed the story needs to be before they can truly connect with and understand that component. So for myself, and this is going somewhere, but for myself, it doesn't matter what I do with my characters before I start writing, they don't feel real to me until I am partway through my book. Magic systems, on the other hand, I can map it all out and it feels right and it feels real. Characters don't feel right, they don't feel real until I am partway through my book. Theme, at best, I figure theme out when I'm in like the second draft or something like that because those are lower ranked on me. Now, lower ranking here, we're not talking about importance at all. We all understand that these different things are important to our story, but the way your personality and your brain works, there's going to be ones that you connect to more readily. So, what I'm talking about here when I'm talking about developing magic for discovery writers, I'm assuming I'm talking about people where magic is probably lower on their list of approach vectors. So they have to go through more of the story to get there. So they may not be a discovery writer per se, but they have to discover their magic through the story. They can't do it before they get into the story. So that's kind of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about discovering our magic system rather than planning our magic system. And I've got a bunch of notes to make sure that I cover the stuff I want. Um, so with that, um, there's some extra aspects that come into play. So for the most part, again, I'm going to bounce back and forth between discovery writing and discovering your um, your magic because with discovery writing, you wander your way through the book and then there's a lot you need to trim. And you can make your magic part of that discovery writing process. Because a lot of times the people I've talked to as they're going, they're just pulling in stuff that they think is cool. They're like, oh, this would be neat. This would be funny. This would be terrifying. This would be awful. And then they just meander through and then they have to edit things down and clean things up. And then it's a part of how well they do the editing, which is the second part of what I want to talk about today is like editing a magic system. But if you're a discovery writer and you're going through the discovery process of your story, what I would suggest, I think the thing that will help you the most will be to think of your magic and treat your magic as a mechanism to support and enhance the other parts of your story. I've talked about that before, but I think rather than thinking of it as a separate thing that you need to build and organize, just say, hey, I am discovering my way through the story, and the magic is here to make this story better. Full stop. Don't worry about how it works. Don't worry about the interest. Like, don't worry about the rules, limitations. Doesn't matter. You're discovering, so just think about it and focus on how it will make things better and just throw that stuff in there as you go. That's probably the biggest thing. Um, and as you're going through, when it comes to actually building the magic, uh, just throw shit in there. Just make stuff up, make it up on the fly. I know that's something that people complain a lot about in like published books, saying it feels like, oh, they're just grabbing things as they need it and yada yada yada. Again, you will be editing your book, you will be editing your magic system. So for now that's fine. Don't think past that. Just make it up as you go, grab the things and toss it in, um, and add it to the discovery process. If you want a little more structure and you're getting to a scene or you're at a certain spot in the book and you want to add magic into it, but you're not quite sure how. Um, I talked about using it to support, but you can focus on. I would recommend focusing on things that will cause problems, things that will make the situation more interesting or make the situation more nuanced. So if your characters are going along and they need to, I don't know, pull a minor raid, they need to go on a raid and extract materials from somebody's office, right? You have that set up, and now you just start making up magic shit to make that more difficult. So you're probably already going to have, because if you think about it, we need somebody to break into an office. What's going to be in their way? There's going to be locked doors, there's going to be alarm systems, there's going to be guards. So you can add magic stuff onto that as well. Magic tripwires, magic alarms, magical barriers, magical locks, magical guardians, all kinds of things. Throw in the stuff that will trip up your character. And then you can also counter with, well, how am I going to overcome these obstacles? I guess I'll give my character the ability to do that. The reason I say to focus on the problems, I know, like, I talk a lot about how overpowered characters are boring. If you are going into these scenes planning on using the magic to solve the problems, it can be almost too easy to develop that kind of cadence where a problem comes up and then you just solve it with magic. It doesn't mean you can't use the magic to solve problems. It means you want to use it to complicate things more than you use it to fix things. And if you're focusing on that and allowing yourself to do the other, you will probably come closer to the balance you need. So again, problems, making it more difficult, making it more interesting. So maybe think the stakes are just higher. So if we go back to just the example of needing to steal a record from an office, well, the magic might make it more interesting if there is, I don't know, some kind of ticking clock where they have a certain amount of time before the magic reacts and it goes into like a full magical bio clean of the facility, destroying everything that is alive inside it. Again, that's kind of a problem. Or making it so it's not just a lock you need to deal with, but it is a lock with a magical key, or the capabilities of the guards are magically enhanced, where you are taking a problem that already exists and you're enhancing it and supporting it and making it more unique and interesting by adding magic into it. So, for example, going back to the guards, right? Maybe the guards are shifters and the guards are mostly in animal form, or at least some of them are in animal form. That makes it interesting because now it's not as simple as just looking out for the humans who are patrolling. You need to find another way to spot all the various life forms that are around and determine which ones are intelligent and which ones which ones are problematic and how to deal with their different senses. Same core barrier, but you have made it more interesting and you have added nuance into that barrier they need to overcome. So, uh, that's really where I think you should focus as you're just going through stuff. If you're stuck and you don't know where to pull in magic, you can do that. Another thing you can do is if you have a theme, um, and this goes back to what you're wanting the magic to support. Again, I'm defaulting into using it to support the plot. That's where my brain usually goes. You could do the same thing with a character. You know you want there to be a tough character decision, and maybe that is they need to decide between grabbing the plans or leaving somebody in danger. but you could also add some magic into play, and whether that danger is magical or the danger is caused is by the magic that, or you can make it so that the magic is forcing the decision. Um, all kinds of stuff. You can use the magic to uh, parallel and as an example for things that you want the characters to learn and grow from, or as kind of a counterpoint as something they don't want to be. So that's using it to support character moments and adding the magic in for your character moments. Theme, if you have a general vibe that you want, that's both theme and genre elements, honestly. Like if you're doing a cozy magical mystery and you don't know what to do in terms of magic, just think what would make this feel like a cozy magical mystery. I'm just going to plop that in there. I'm going to plop in a talking cat. There's going to be bird alarms. And this person is going to have herbs like strung up around their house as a barrier because that's not super threatening, but it is interesting and it is magical. Um, so making sure you understand what you're going for and then just grabbing things to make it connect. But again, I think you should primarily focus on stuff that is going to make it more interesting, more nuanced, or serve as examples for what you want to happen rather than a direct solution. For a character moment, right? If they are dealing with a trauma um, or they have a hard decision that they need to make, you don't want to come in with the magic and say, here's the magic to make the decision for you, because that robs your character moment, right? The point of that moment is them dealing with that conflict and coming to a decision. So you don't want to just come in and be like, here you go, the magic makes the choice for you. Or again, if we go back to trauma, they're dealing with a severe trauma or a panic attack. You don't want to just come in and be like, okay, I'm just going to give them magic so that that calms it down and they feel better and they can go about their business, because you just defeated the point of that moment. But if you bring it in and you have characters having a panic attack, and when they have their panic attacks, they lose control over their magic, and this is happening while they're trying to sneak into the facility, so they're having a minor panic attack as the guards are closing in and things are going wrong, and their magic is starting to go haywire and get more difficult to control and causing other things that's going to make it more likely for them to be noticed. That is more interesting. So that's that's one of the things that I recommend if you're as you're going through your discovery process and trying to add magic in. That's how that's how I would recommend thinking about it. All of this stuff is recommendations and guesses because I'm not much of a discovery writer. So hopefully this is making sense to you guys, and I will get caught up. I will get caught up on the chat after I get through this middle portion, which it looks like I'm already kind of blasting through this first part. Uh, I did talk about that. I'm just going to state it again though. As you're doing this, actively limit how freely you and how often you use the magic to make your characters, your protagonists, powerful, awesome, or badass. A little bit of that is good. Too much will very quickly start dipping into the Terry Sue side of things, where it feels like it's just kind of wish fulfillment. And you're putting yourself in their shoes so that you can feel awesome and powerful and not having the same compelling story. Again, all of this goes out the window when you're dealing with the genre that OP characters are the point, but really, really watch that. You don't want to overdo it. So, again, it's something that's going to happen naturally. You don't want that to be your first go to. How can I make magic? How can I add magic into here? Well, I'm going to bring magic in to make my character awesome. Or I'm going to bring magic in to make him look like a badass. Resist the urge and try and focus on the nuance and problems instead. And you'll probably end up with a better balance. Um, all right. Oh, yeah. And again, this is where it's always weird. I hope this stuff is helpful. Um, my own imposter syndrome and insecurities. There's a lot of this stuff that, as I'm talking about it, I feel like I'm just repeating advice that you have already heard. Um, hopefully, it's helpful in this slightly different context. But for example, this next piece is really just for discovery process in general, because discovery writing, as I understand it, is basically it's a long form version of brainstorming. a very long form version of brainstorming, depending on how you do it. So treat it like brainstorming. Um, Allow yourself to have bad ideas. Don't worry about things being cohesive or making sense. If you're going through, it's like, oh, I didn't, I just brought up a random clue that I didn't mention anywhere earlier in the book. That's fine because you can go back and add the clue. Um, you're brainstorming. Things aren't going to be connected. Things aren't going to be smooth, and that's okay. Just allow that to happen and focus on getting through the discovery process before you delve into trying to fix it. Discovery writers especially need to develop a solid relationship with their internal editor so that they can shut it off or just tell them to come back later. Um, the most difficult clients I've had where like not necessarily difficult on my end, but difficult in terms of like we've had a really hard time getting them done with stuff are the ones that need to do discovery writing but also have a hyperfixation on doing everything right the first time. So they end up in this process where they will get a little bit through and then they will go back and they will that's a lot of times where I see somebody just repeating like the first third or whatever and then they do a complete overhaul and start over and they really need to push through the entire discovery process. So, um, that's it and just give yourself permission and psychological freedom to explore these things and to do things bad and do things messy. Very important with discovery, especially important if you aren't used to adding magic into your discovery process and you're now going to do so, just give yourself permission to do it bad. So, um, that is what I wanted to talk about in terms of creating magic systems as a discovery writer. This next portion, I want to talk specifically about editing magic systems. But I am going to get caught up on the chat because uh, you guys are being real active, and that is great. Uh, yeah, Ty. So if people didn't already tell you, there's a number of conferences in the Colorado area. There's Mile High Con in Denver, which is a more of a reader show than a writing conference. The main two down in Colorado Springs are Superstars Writing Seminars, and Pikes Peak Writers Conference. Both of those are fantastic. Um, Pikes Peak is more on the writing and is cheaper and is a lot more beginner friendly. Superstars is more expensive and is focused a lot. It is primarily focused on the business of being a writer. So understanding marketing, managing newsletters, figuring out ads, writing your bio, getting your headshots, and that kind of stuff. They cover a lot of things. They have added a craft day to the beginning of Superstars, so there is a day where people like me talk about things like magic systems, or Jonathan Maybury shows up and he usually does a 3 hour workshop on fight scenes, which I can never go to because they always schedule that at the same time I'm giving my class. But those are very good ones in Colorado Springs. Let's see. You can't write about strangers. You need to have them developed. Yeah, characters are a weird thing. I need to understand how they work at a mechanical level, but I don't feel I know them and can spontaneously like do things with them until I've written with them for a little while. Always feel uh, need to leave room for some mystery. That's fair. Usually start with tiny idea, uncover most of it as I write. Exactly. Um, and I bet, Kit, that if you, yep, try and brainstorm ahead of time, but you have way more ideas as you're actually writing. And I'm betting that the brainstorming is clunky and doesn't feel right. Um, it doesn't feel right. Like the story doesn't feel solid. Is my guess. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but uh, okay, that's a good one. Somebody said my explanation of Discovery Writers: we can't figure out many things, plot, character reactions, uh, magic until we visualize the scenes in detail. In other words, until we write scenes. Just from that, Kit, I can tell that you are a very visual person, And if you are getting into a new story, if you haven't already tried this, you might try just doing fiddling around with some AI art or browsing on Google to find visual inspiration. That might be what you need to really kickstart things if you don't already do that. Find they contradict each other. Glad to have you here, Angie, whether you're late or not. um, all right. Just, okay, cool. This is great. You guys are having some great conversation here. I just wanted to make sure I'm not missing any questions. Um, yeah, and Andrew, it's you can have the magic help them circumvent the flaws. You just don't want it to be a permanent solution, and you don't want to do that all the time. An example I have that I'm hesitant to give because the last time I talked about this on YouTube, I got a whole bunch of angry people commenting on it. Um, it come it sort of relates to writing characters with disabilities. If you have a character with a disability, don't just give them magic that negates the disability, because then uh, you no longer have somebody with a disability. You have a person who is just as able as everybody else, but in a slightly different way, which is honestly everybody to begin with. Um, like that's hmm, Daredevil is a great character, and I really like the show, and the comics are fantastic. That is an example of where, for the most part, him being blind doesn't really matter. They have a couple of specific instances where it does, but for the most part, it really doesn't. Um, but with somebody I ended up talking with, this isn't to say it can't be a circumvention or even a temporary solution. One of the people who commented on my video about superpowers, they said that they had a character who was paralyzed. I think it was either paraplegic or quadriplegic, and their magic could overcome that disability, but only temporary. So they had like a time limit, and it was a fairly short time limit. So then it was like day to day, I am disabled and I have to deal with this. I'm just able to turn it off and maybe gain a little bit of extra capability on top of that for short periods of time, but I have to be very cautious and very intelligent about when I choose to do that. That's allowing them to circumvent it, but it's also making it more interesting because of the extra limitations that are on it. If you just make it of, hey, my character is a paraplegic, but I'm going to give them magic so that they can animate their own body, and now they just move and function like a normal person, then they're not paraplegic, and you should. It's not. It's not helpful. um, Another example I have from a series that I didn't like as much. At the beginning, character ends up being an amputee, loses a lot of his limbs uh, because of war, and I knew it was going to be um, a cultivation type series. I didn't know if it was full lit RPG or not, so I expected it to be something where he was like uploaded into virtual or something like that. But no, they got a healing spell, and then over the course of several days, so it took them a fair bit of work. But again, let's talk about plot problems. It took like a chapter of them using the heal spell a lot to regrow all of his limbs. At which point I was like, I don't know why you put me through all of that at the beginning of this person going through this trauma and being upset and handling all of this only to just hand wave it away. I I don't like that you did that to me. So, but that's a personal thing. Um, I that went on a whole rant, and that is a rant that is probably just going to stay in the live. So, use magic for whimsy. Excellent. Uh, See the magic as a tool to solve some plot problems, mostly a way to add personal problems. That's another great way to approach it. But yeah, it's not that you can't use it to do these things. It's just it's really easy to overdo it with solving problems with magic and making our characters um, badass. Because if we do it too much, then it robs the conflict. Um, it robs the conflict out of our story, which we want to keep there. Okay. I'm glad you like the skull. You guys can't see it from there, but it actually has a bunch of it's it is carved, it has engravings in it, and it has a really cool dragon on it. Um, and I love it. I'm seeing a reference back to Ty about if you know your writing style. I don't see what that is commenting on. So, um, Ty and Lovers, if you guys can work on formulating that into a question, I will address that at the end. But now we can move into the next topic. So, the next topic, what I want to talk about here is editing a magic system. And again, some caveats on what that means. Um, when I'm talking about editing a magic system, I'm not talking about iteration. Uh, Iteration is the process of going back to discovery and refinement and all of that kind of stuff. This is what happens as you are developing and before anything is really polished and anything is really finalized. When I'm talking about editing, there is something in place that is limiting how much freedom you have to add, create, and change. That could be any number of things. It could be that the magic is an essential part of your character's identity, so that's a piece of the magic that you can't really change anymore. That needs to be there in that fashion, or you need a new character, or you need to find a new way to make that character feel that thing. Most commonly, I think people are going to run into this when they have a book published. So if you have a book out or a series out, or you've been doing it serially, or however, there is some reason that you can't just wave your hand and change things on the fly. If you can just change things, you're still probably going through the 7 stages, and that's just iteration and modification. Um, Editing is specifically when you, like I said, you have those things in place that are limiting your capability to freely change the scope and function of magic. That the reason that's important, that's going to shape a lot of that's going to shape the entire rest of the conversation. So I wanted to make sure that I cleared that up at the beginning. That's what I'm talking about. So, um, and yes, Servo, you're exactly right. Using the magic and disability, focusing on the price of magic, because again, that's nuance and complication, and in a different way, that's adding a different level and a different issue to their disability. So, for example, I have general anxiety disorder and major depressive disorder. Uh, if I had magic that like basically just bottled up my anxiety. So when I was having an anxiety spike or I was having a panic attack, I could use the magic to just compress that, bottle it up, and I wouldn't feel that there. But I have to feel it eventually. So the more I bottle up and I have to release it all at once. So the more I use the magic, the more I am building up a nasty, nasty panic attack that I'm going to have to deal with later. That's still my disability. It's just a different way for me to manage it and adding a weird price to it. And then you can add other prices to it on top of that. But I digress because I saw the comment. So now, because we were talking about discovery writers, it this will kind of apply there. You will have more freedom, and this is more general iteration. But because at this point you probably have a full draft, possibly drafts of multiple books. And while you might still technically be dealing with standard iteration, I imagine that you don't want to change everything because having to reconstruct everything would mean going through an entirely new discovery process. So discovery writers are kind of in the same boat as like I am when I have um, a book through several levels of polish. Um, but not quite. But I think this process is going to be very much the same. So regardless of why you need to edit your magic system. Oh, another reason you might need to edit your magic system is you're looking back and you're reading what you've already published and you find some mistakes. You contradicted yourself. You said that they could do something in book one, and you don't want them to be able to do that in book three because that would completely neutralize this main conflict point for what you're going through in book three. Um, Whatever the reason, something needs to be changed, and you need to figure it out. Need to figure out how to move forward and make it all work. The first thing that you should do, and this can be time consuming, but trust me, it is worth it. Go through what you have written and make a record of all of the ideas that you mention and every instance that the magic is used and how it is used. You don't necessarily need to record the exact chapter or anything like that. Depending on how you do your editing of your book, that might be helpful. But if we're just looking at the magic, that's not essential. You just want to know person used the magic to do X. So book one, chapter whatever, somebody used magic to bar the door to keep the police from getting inside. Um, and you can provide a little bit and I said they did it by conjuring a glowing bar of mana that they just jammed the door with. Just gather that information and get a list of all of this stuff. Now, once you have a list of all of your ideas, which if you've been going through brainstorming and iteration, you're going to have a lot of this stuff written down anyway. But if you're doing discovery writing, you might have made it through the entire first draft without doing any of that um, idea collection. And now is where you need to do that idea collection. Once you have that list of all of the ideas, and you have way more than you can deal with, and you're limited in what you can move and tweak because of reasons, from there, take all of those ideas and split them into groups. So the main three that I recommend, you can definitely add more, but the main three I recommend are essential, love, and other. So every idea and every use of magic, list it as essential, love, or other. Now, essential, when I say essential, that means it is pivotal to something in your story. It is pivotal to the character's backstory, to their defining moment, to a character conflict between them and somebody else. Or it's pivotal to why a faction exists or why a faction is trying to do a thing. If there is an object that a faction is going to extreme lengths to procure, you need that artifact. Otherwise, the faction wouldn't be doing what they're doing. Those are all essential. Love is just the ideas that you like and that you really enjoy. You could potentially pull them out, but they're the ones that are in there that you really want to keep. They aren't essential yet, but you really want to keep them, or ideas that you haven't found a way to work in yet, but you also really love and want to keep, or you want to integrate them into the system as a whole. So we talked about the guards who do animal shapeshifting. Maybe the cool idea that you have that you love and didn't come up in the discovery writing is that you want there to be shifters of mythological creatures, not just mundane creatures. Don't know what you're going to do with that. That's not there yet, but that's something you put in the love box. Other, those are the ones that you feel so about. Those are the ones that you actively dislike. Those are the ones that are causing problems. Or if you're looking at it and you're saying, I don't know what to do with this, or this doesn't seem to fit everything else, you might want to put it in the other box. Um, because once you have those three boxes, and you can do more boxes if you want. You could divide them into character plot, like love, like, dislike, disinterest, hate. I don't know, as much as you need, but those three I think are the most important. Um, because once you have those, you can generally ignore everything that's in the other box. Like, don't delete it because you can use that in a different system. But you can mostly ignore what's in the other box and focus on the essentials and the love box. Because essentials are what you need to make your system work around, and then the things that are in the love box are the stuff that you want to work into the system somehow. So, I am going to grab a quick drink of water. I hope this is making sense. This is something that has been kicking around in my brain for a while, and this is the debut of some of these concepts. Okay. Oh, I should have mentioned that first. Okay. After, gonna back up a little bit. After you get the list of ideas and you get your records lined out, after that, I don't know that the order you do these other things matters. I don't know how much the order you do these things matters, and I don't yet know if you even need to do all of these things. One of them is the boxes, right? You may not need to do that. I highly encourage that because it makes it easier for you to focus and deal with stuff down the line. Me personally, I would do that immediately after I create my list, but you may not have to. Something I'm still working with. But another thing you could do, so you need to do this editing or this solidifying as a discovery writer. The blueprint, magic system blueprint. There. Fill that out. And you can get the blueprint itself for free on my website. Like, you don't have to get the whole book. I try not to do paywalls wherever I can. I try to minimize the paywalls I use as much as possible because there are few things that frustrate me more. Anyway, you can get the blueprint itself, just the template where you can draw things out. You can download that. You can print that off. So one of the things you can do is you could fill out the blueprint for your magic system and start tweaking the variables and figure out where you want it, especially looking at the types of magic. Even if you do nothing else with the blueprint, figuring out where you want your magic to fall on that quadrant chart, immensely valuable. Immensely valuable because once you know that, that is going to change how you need to approach the rest of your system and how into the weeds you need to get about how things work, how much you need to worry about the consistency, how cohesive things need to be, how easily you can pull things out of left field because whether it's hard or soft, if people know it's a soft system, they will be less upset by new magical stuff randomly showing up. If it's a hard system where you spent a lot of time saying you now know everything about the system, and then you just drag in another thing, and then another thing, and then another thing, that's going to be kind of frustrating because at that point, it's like you told me I knew everything, and now you're just feels like you're pulling crap out of nowhere. So understanding the type of magic you want, um, very valuable, and going through the blueprint that will help with a lot of this. Now, um, also, you can just generally go through the 7 stages. You're probably going to be going through the 7 stages anyway, but doing it deliberately of identifying the problems you have with your magic of like, I don't like X, or I want it to be more Y, or I'm trying to find ways to make it feel like Z. You know, just jump into idea generation, see if you have a solid seed crystal, bounce around to restrictions, do some testing, work your way through the 7 stages, just work with the other tools you have. Now, if you are dealing with something that is already published and the essentials are truly essential and cannot be changed, then you just have to treat them as true. Don't retcon. Actually, I'll get to that in a second. Don't just ignore it. uh, find ways to make it work. There's a great world building game that I really like, and um, down the line, this is a whole side thing. I thought it might be fun to do some small group stuff if people are interested, where people come in and play this game with me. It's called Microscope, and the important thing about Microscope is its turn. You go around a circle, building the world and building events and building characters. The important thing about Microscope, one of the main rules, is that when it is somebody else's turn, everything they say is true. Full stop. You don't get to tell them no. You don't get to tell them no unless it is part of the palette that you guys did initially, where you're like, we don't want these elements. Aside from that, if somebody says, I want this character to do this thing, you can't say no. I want them to do this thing. You don't get to do that. And when it comes to your turn, you can't add something that contradicts what they already said. That's the mentality you want to have with your essentials. Is your essentials are true, or they are true in a fashion. What happened happened. Full stop. You aren't trying to undo what happened ever. But you can play with it. You can make it so that what people think happened isn't what actually happened. So I use the magic to bar the door, or I use magic to pick a lock, right? I may think that I did it with a spell, because that is my understanding of magic. But then we go into a whole thing where it wasn't what we thought. My knowledge about the magic was wrong. I had false knowledge about how it worked. I still did what I did. My understanding of how I did it and what I actually did was wrong. Um, and part of that could be I may have done it through a very ineffective, circuitous, convoluted fashion where by knowing what the magic actually does, I could do it in one step instead of 20. Those are the types of things you want to do, but the stuff that is in the essential box, that happens. Period. You don't want to change those. If you change those, well, if it's already published, you can't change those. If you're discovery writing and it's essential because it's pivotal to something in your story, then if you change that or remove that, you need to go back to that other thing and adjust that. If you remove the magic that was pivotal to a character decision, you need to reassess that character decision and find another way for it to make sense for them to make that same decision and for it to have the same impact. So, um, yeah, I kind of went on a tear there, but let's see. Go through the 7 stages. Talk on that. Throw this stuff out the window. Excellent. I got to talk about false knowledge. All right. In my book, Restrictions May Apply, has a bunch of different exercises that you can do, but one of them in particular is very useful, especially when you're working with things in the love category. The exercise is to take your favorite elements of your magic system and then add rules, limitations, countermeasures, consequences, whatever, that make your favorite thing impossible. So I want my characters to be able to fly. I love flying characters. They're going to fly. Well, now you're going to make a bunch of rules as to why they actually can't fly. It's too difficult. It's too dangerous. The magic can't actually do it. Yada, yada, yada. Don't worry, because then the next step is you then start adding more patterns and more information, or even exceptions, so that your favorite thing is now just barely possible again. Because now it's rare, now it's interesting, and now there's a lot more nuance and complexity for you to explore in order for them to do this thing, and then your favorite thing is also more likely to become somebody else's favorite thing. So, that's good. Um, that is so that's a great exercise to do that, finding other ways to work around it. Um, yeah, so in that's true when you're dealing with patterns, when you're dealing with whatever. You want to focus on the essentials, fit things to that, and then you can start adding stuff in. The difficulty of that is going to depend on how rational or irrational your system is. But you might end up on occasion with ideas that straight up don't fit. You can't find a way, you can't find the logic to make these things play well together. You can't figure it out. Options. Let's talk options. It could be a separate magic system, for one. That's always a potentiality. You could fabricate connections. It's something I've talked about before, where the connection is just sensory or superficial and not actually mechanical or logical. It's just like, hey, so they do this thing and it's connected by this sensation that happens, and that's why it's part of the same system. Don't worry about the rest. Um, that's one of the options that you have. The other thing is just like when you need to fix a problem. Again, this is where false knowledge can come in. Maybe one of the rules that you have is wrong, and the characters don't know it's wrong, and they don't know how it's wrong, and maybe you don't even know how it's wrong. That's fine. um, it just, especially if you hang a lantern on it, where people are like, "Well, you say that magic works this way, but what about this thing?" Why does that do that? And then everybody looks and like, yeah, we don't know. Yeah, we haven't figured that out. The rules work for everything else, though. That one is just a special snowflake over there. That's one of the things you can do. You can find, uh, you can make it complicated and convoluted. You can also break your own rules. There can be a part of this that breaks the system, or you may have said in book one that X was impossible, and then you want it to be possible in book three. You can break your rules. Just when you do, the most important thing is to understand that it will be important to someone and somewhere. It may not matter because your characters, they may not care that they just did something that supposedly nobody can do. Somebody will care. It will be a big deal somewhere. Doesn't mean it has to make it into your story, but you need to be aware of that because that's a lot of story fodder for you to take advantage of, and that would be a shame to do that. Even if you just have it on the side, where characters they're sitting there saying, "Hey, this is impossible," and they're like, "Oh, what? You mean this?" Like, yeah, that is impossible. How'd you do that? I don't know. Let's get out of this alive and then we can deal with it. And then the side character goes off and is doing a bunch of research, being like, I don't understand how your powers work. They shouldn't work this way. You don't have to spend a ton of time on it. You just showing that it has repercussions and it has ripples can be enough to make it feel real. As long as somebody is taking note that the rules were broken, that can be enough. All right. Okay, I thought these were going to be like two 10-minute conversations because I just had like a single page of notes, and that plus the stuff in the middle, we're at like the 15-minute mark. uh, so I'm probably good to stick around a little longer, but I'm going to get some water, and then we can get some water, get caught up in the chat, and then we can jump into the Q&A. So if you haven't already, start dropping your questions into the Q&A area, or just into the chat. I am both thrilled and a little disappointed by the amazing conversations that are happening in chat. I love that you guys are talking about this and figuring things out and giving each other ideas. I am sad that I am not more engaged in that because there's some cool stuff here. Um, and I imagine this is just going to get worse as we get more people. So it might end up being that I have a small topic to talk about, and then we just go on tangents about stuff you guys bring up because you guys are talking about law, you're talking about politics. This is some great stuff. For me, the hard part is to make the magic world satisfy me, things like magical laws of physics and so on. Yes, I could see that. That is a whole big topic. If you can, Servo, if you want to shoot me an email, giving me like a paragraph or even like a page or two, like talking through what makes you crazy and like what you're struggling with, maybe I can do a topic on specifically that. Oh, Lawverse, yeah, what you're talking about, keeping one big mysterious part of the magic. Yeah, that's great. Making it, and that's just you are just intentionally keeping it from becoming too hard of a system by hanging a lantern on it and saying, "Look, I know I'm giving you a lot of information, but there's still a bunch of stuff that we don't understand." Back to the stuff we do. Just know that this is here. Like then that gives you the freedom to pull things out of that corner later. That is definitely a good way to do it. Okay, question. I am writing a steampunk series, realistic, grounded, mechanical steam technology. It looks like I can design steampunk tech, like designing a magic system. Yes, absolutely. When I talk about magic, I mean anything that enables effects or abilities beyond our capability or understanding, which includes advanced tech. It includes steampunk tech. It includes lost tech. It includes monsters, Lovecraftian horrors, astrological phenomenon, planar phenomenon, anything that is that step beyond reality, you can treat like a magic system. Um, the main differences, there's a number of differences that are in the blueprint back here. Um, some of the big ones is with one of the most important ones with tech or anything you want to feel like tech is transference. Uh, Technology, by its nature, is transferable. You can hand it off to different people. And that's actually something that comes up in the Worm web serial, where there are tinkers. These are people like Tony Stark, where they make tech to do things, but they have to maintain their tech and it degrades rapidly, so it's not actually tech. It is magic manifesting through gadgets that they make. True technology can be handed off. Blaster rifle can be handed off. Cotton mill can be handed off. It might require a certain level of know-how and the capability to produce those things, which can make it more difficult. But technically, if people had the resources and had the knowledge, anybody should be able to use it. That that is that is the big part about technology. You can add some caveats and stuff like that of like, hey, I'm finding ways to code this to me specifically, but in general, the base technology can be handed off. But beyond that, you can approach everything the same. A lot of your stuff is going to be very aesthetic focused. So you figure out, hey, I want this magical effect. I want them to be able to do X. So you have the themes of steampunk and you have the effect you want to do, and now you just kind of make shit up to marry the two together. So, I want somebody to I want somebody to be able to pick locks in a second. So I could do it magically, where I just like magically arcane the lock open. Or fun thing about lock picking, there are these little things called pick guns, where um, it looks kind of like a staple gun, where it has a trigger that you squeeze, and it just has a needle on the end. And when you squeeze the trigger, it bumps the tumblers. So which is actually a lockpicking technique called bumping. It just does it mechanically and it does it faster. Uh, so you could basically just take that, slap some steampunk aesthetic on it to the point where it's like, oh yeah, like this is this is a pick gun on steroids, where it does some test runs, it modulates, it adjusts, and then it does it rapid fire to make sure that I get everything done, and it does all of this in a single burst of steam, and boom, lock is open. So technology is a lot of times just adding some logic and some visual veneer on top. But the main thing is transference. That's some of the biggest stuff about it. Other than that, have at it. Just open your mind, think of it as magic, and then just tweak what it looks like and feels like to make it feel like part of the steampunk world. That's really, I need to finish the series, but that's really what they did in Arcane. Is there's a lot of stuff that they're just like, we want some things. Okay, we're just gonna make it feel like part of the system. All right. Yep, I think Lucas covered a lot of what I was already talking about. Oh, why does it jump like that? Okay, so from Kit Dunsmore, I know multiple magic systems are an option, but what does that look like? Can they be completely unrelated? Yes. The biggest problem you run into with multiple magic systems is going to be screen time. Um, and when I say screen time, I'm talking about words on page. You have a set number of words in a book, Even if you're doing a really big book, even if you're doing a Sanderson book, you end up with a set number of words, and that limits how much information that you can bring across. So that is going to shape how. Whoops, gonna have to edit that out. That is going to shape how the magic is going to be perceived by the readers until you have time to make it feel the way you want it to feel. One of them is probably going to be unexplored for quite a while, and it's going to feel like a softer system. Uh, but yes, they can be completely unrelated. They can be completely different systems. If you want, you can later tie them together. But no, no, you don't have to. In the Powder Mage trilogy by Brian McClellan, uh, there are the privileged who do like your super powerful, more standard sorcery with like elements and stuff, and then you have the Powder Mages who work magic using gunpowder. Those systems are completely unrelated, except for one thing, and that is that privileged are allergic to gunpowder. That's it. It doesn't interrupt their abilities or anything. They just have like intense allergies, like pollen season around gunpowder. That's it. That's the only connection he has. There's other magic systems in there as well. One of the characters, Carp, is her name is Carpole, and uh, she's what's called a bone eye, and she has a completely different source of magic that I kind of wish he had gone more into. But that's super mysterious. We don't really ever see more than a couple of things that she can do. We get zero explanation of how it actually works, other than it seems to be connected to Bones' blood and kind of like a version of voodoo, sort of, but not really. um, so yeah, like that one alone, three separate systems, very distinct, very different. Okay, Naz, biggest issue is the source of magic. I'm going to send that to you too. If you want to go to one of my suggestion boxes or shoot me an email, I can do a topic where I talk about the source of magic. Because I'm not sure, but especially if you send me an email, you can give me some information. You can give me some examples of what you're talking about. Um, my guess is that you might be reaching further than you need to. Is my guess. Is you're trying to find and explain more than is actually necessary, and you're getting to the point where it ends up feeling cringe. But drop that in the topic suggestion box or shoot me an email with some examples, and I would love to circle back to that and get you some help on that topic. Oh, and part of what Lucas is talking about different systems that are connected but don't seem that way, that's false knowledge and perspective can also play into that, where it works the same, but people's understanding of it is different. It's actually the same system, just the way they interpret it and they may apply their own logical limitations that aren't actually limitations of the system. They apply their own limitations. And if it's influenced by personality and prejudice and stuff like that, that might be why over here it all looks like fire magic and over there it all looks like ice magic when it's actually the same ability. Lots of stuff to play with. Also, a good question from Jack for Naz is what's not cringe in general for you? Making sure you're aware of that is good. Okay. Ty Woods messed up. I'm doing three separate power systems, kinda classers, cultivators, and hybrids. So it's hard balancing it. Lit RPG cultivation. I don't know that you messed up, but yeah, that is something that is going to be trickier to balance. And having one person who has all of those might be a bit much. That's going to come down to personal preference. A very popular lit RPG series is Solo Leveling, which I got as an audiobook and didn't realize that it was a graphic novel. And then the audiobook was basically them just reading the graphic novel. It was not great. Check out the graphic novel. I didn't care for that one a ton because in that system, there's the whole, or in that world, there's the whole system of hunters, which seems to be a fairly common trope among a lot of animes. So from what I understand, I haven't seen it, but doing some research, it sounds like very Hunter x Hunter, where you have each hunters have their own little abilities and their own unique knacks. That alone was enough to do a lit RPG or cultivation story on. But then they added a crunchy leveling system on top of it and had him powering up through that, doing his solo leveling. And I personally felt that was a bit much because then they stacked two systems on top of each other, either of which could have been fine on their own. Um, and then there was a bunch of stuff that I don't know. I had a hard time. I had a hard time getting into it. But a thing that keeps coming up over and over and over is that he is a rank E hunter, which starts at S A B C D E. So he is way at the bottom, at the lowest rank. And supposedly there's no way for hunters to really gain in power to go up in rank. But because of his levels, he is able to go toe to toe with rank B hunters and then rank A hunters and so on. And that's kind of the whole gimmick there. Not my thing. It's very popular. You guys can check it out. Um, so I think you should definitely check that out, Ty, and see what connections you have, see what they do that you do like, and see what they do that you don't like. That's kind of my whole point there. And also, you're not going to make everybody happy. So as long as you really like it, and that's some of the most important stuff right there. Yep, Lucas, you got a lot of my stuff covered, my dude. Talking about it doesn't have to be the same in the whole world. Yeah. Bones, blood, teeth. All right. Okay, okay. We do have a question from Lobbers. If I were more in tune with this stuff, I'm sure there was a way that I could like have questions go in a specific spot. Maybe down the line I can have some moderators, but I'm not there yet. Question: my story is Alpine folklore, and it is inspired by Alpine folklore with strong Ghibli vibe, and I'm trying to create a magic system for shepherds, which somehow includes their herds depending on the animal species. But now I feel like it's way too complicated. Any ideas for simplifying magic systems? Um, that sounds pretty great to me, actually. I think the first place to start with simplifying your magic system is to really dig into your seed crystal and make sure you have your seed crystal clearly defined and honed into a razor's edge. You've really got that hammered down. So what you're talking about with the shepherds and the magic, um, I don't know if that's your seed crystal, but that sounds like a great seed crystal. Where it's something along the lines of like alpine shepherds gain magic um, based on the herds of animals that they shepherd, based on what they shepherd. Um, and with that as the concept, like that as the core concept, you can then go through the rest of the process and be like, okay, how is the magic used? Well, the magic is probably going to be used primarily for them to be better shepherds, to keep their flock alive, to fight off predators, and depending on what is in the world, that starts getting very interesting really fast. Because if we're talking like something in the Wix Chronicles, um, where you have the burned ones and stuff out there, maybe the shepherds are able to create different types of barriers to deal with different kinds of predators. Or it could be something where you have dire wolves and werewolves and very D&D-esque and that kind of stuff going on. So it's something where you get some thematic powers that you can activate based on the animals you have. And it might be that the number of animals you have in your flock boosts your power, but then it becomes this cost benefit thing of like, if I get too many, I can't protect all of them, but the more I have, the more powerful I am. So then it becomes this really interesting thing, especially if you're dealing with smart animals like coyotes or let's say giant crows. that will get very interesting because yeah, you have 200 head of cattle or 200 sheep, and they let you be really powerful. Let's just go with bulls or with cattle. Say they give you some super strength and toughen your skin. Super strong, and you can tank a bunch of stuff. The problem is because you're dealing with some smart predators, some will engage with you while others pick off different aspects of your flock, and then they're all going to scatter and you still lost some of your flock and you are now weaker than you were before. Like you can start playing with stuff like that. So I think really dig into your seed crystal. I've got some other videos about seed crystals. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. And now I have to find where I was. Oh no, I lost where I was. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I hope that helps, Lobbers. Okay, so okay, I think I am. Oh no, I am not caught up. Why is it not scrolling? That's weird. Oh yeah, you guys are already tackling a lot of that. So what I'm talking about is kind of redundant, but hopefully it's still helpful. Uh, yes, just what Jack said. That will let you make it real. Like look at the problems that they ran into, some of the solutions that they had, and then you can start turning those into magical solutions and stuff like that. Okay, do you guys have any other questions for me? And also, I would like to thank you guys. It looks like there was some back and forth, and I appreciate how civil you guys are because I get on the internet sometimes, and but you guys are great, and um, I really appreciate that about you and about this community that is forming. So yeah, I'm gonna drink some more water. This is your last chance for some questions, and then we'll sign off. One thing I am gonna do is I am going to grab a link. Um, I'm gonna grab a link for my new YouTube channel because obviously you guys know about this one, or or you wouldn't be at the live stream. I'm gonna grab the new one, and if you guys want to check it out, I would love to have you join over there. It's called it's called Clark's Haven, and the tagline is just me doing a quick introduction and saying, "Hey, this is the channel where I share things that bring me joy," and that is all that channel is going to be, because I really like VR stuff, as you can tell, and they're just things that I'd like to share with people that didn't really make sense for me to put into the Magic Engineer. So there's that link for anybody who is interested. Let's see. Never get on the internet sometimes. That's pretty good advice. All right. Well, thank you guys for showing up. This this has been fantastic. I think this might be the highest number of people that we've had. So again, thank you everybody for your time. You can wait, what? Oh, I just gave you the link for the Magic Engineer. Go me. Grabbed the wrong one. Yeah, you know that channel. This the channel that you guys are on like right now. That one, that's the new one. No, there's the new one. Um, and like I said at the beginning, right now it's just some VR content. I am hoping to, when I have the motivation, I want to do some recordings of me doing like some fantasy maps and things like Wonder Draft. Maybe doing some recordings where I just um, talk about tabletop RPG stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's just I just want it to be stuff that I enjoy. Part of that is uh, part of that what I just got set up. I said this at the very beginning. I just got Fallout 4, the Fallout 4 VR Essentials mod list installed. The mod list created by Gingas, which turns it into like a kind of intense survival um, RPG, which I'm looking forward to. And I've got Enderal VR queued up, and I've got some Skyrim VR queued up with the Libram mod list, which again, um, is survival. Like it makes things a lot difficult, and it's a lot more focused on survival and a lot more terrifying and darker. And I'm excited to get into it. So, in terms of, am I on some Discord channels? I am not great about online comms. I'll be honest, but you can. My best recommendation, honestly, the one that I check the most often. There's some of the game channels that I go to. So Santa Group Games, who does Libram, Ghosts of Tabor channel and stuff like that. But one of the ones that I'm kind of more in the community is the World Build with Us Discord channel, which, if you haven't checked out the World Build with Us podcast, you absolutely should. But that is a place where it is totally okay for you to just tag me in there and be like, hey, Clark, had a question for you. That's probably the best place to ping me if you want to talk to me on Discord. All right. Um, okay, that's it. Oh, I guess one last thing that I'm going to toss out there. Because you asked about Discord, I did have a Discord server up that I was trying to get things moving to do an open um, tabletop RPG table. That wasn't quite working on Discord, so I might be shifting to an email list. So keep an eye out for that. I'll probably be dropping links here and on some of my channels, so make sure that you like and subscribe to the channels. You'll get those notifications in the community area when I do that. Um, and that's something that has been on the back burner a little bit, but I'm also looking forward to getting that. And now I'm kind of just I'm just kind of rambling and vibing with you guys, as it's been a good morning and it's good talking with you guys. I'm gonna duck out, and I am probably gonna go play some Fallout, and most likely die horribly. Um, Definitely gonna die horribly, but again, I'm just rambling. I'm super excited. If you guys haven't seen any of the videos by Gopher on YouTube, he does a bunch of Skyrim Let's Plays and goes through like the entire game. I don't know if I'm going to get through the entire game, but I love how he does the roleplay of his characters. So what I'm currently thinking is, for the Fallout one, I'm going to be doing a really terrible New York accent for this guy named William, and he's going to be going around and dealing with stuff. He seems like a tough guy, but he's actually pretty sweet dude. And I'm gonna have a good time. So hope to see you guys there. Thank you for being here. Now get out of here. Get some writing done, but whatever you do, just make sure that you guys stay awesome. Bye, guys.